The morning light filtered through the kitchen window, casting long golden streaks across the warm linoleum floor. I stood at the counter, my hands wrapped around a coffee mug that had long since gone cold, staring at the steam rising from the fresh pot I had just brewed. The house was quiet, that particular kind of silence that settles over a home just before dawn, when the world outside is still sleeping and the only sounds are the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of old floorboards adjusting to the changing temperature. The air smelled of coffee and something else, something I could not quite place, a faint mustiness that had been growing stronger over the past few weeks, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. My name is Catherine, and I am 47 years old, though some days I feel much older. I have lived in this house for 23 years, ever since my husband Daniel and I bought it with our modest savings and big dreams. Back then, the walls were freshly painted, the floors gleamed, and every room held the promise of a future filled with laughter and love. Now, the paint is chipped, the floors are scuffed, and the promise has faded into something I can barely recognize. But this is still my home, and these are still my people, even when they break my heart. I heard footsteps on the stairs, slow and deliberate, and I knew without turning around that it was my daughter Emma. She has always been a late sleeper, preferring the quiet hours of the night to the bustling energy of the day. At 22, she should have been out in the world, building her own life, but circumstances had brought her back home 6 months ago, and she had been here ever since, sleeping in her childhood bedroom with its faded purple walls and posters of bands she no longer listened to. "Good morning, Mom," she said, her voice still thick with sleep. She moved past me to pour herself a cup of coffee, and I caught the scent of her shampoo, something floral and sweet that reminded me of spring gardens. She was wearing an old t-shirt and pajama pants, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, and there were shadows under her eyes that spoke of restless nights and troubled dreams. "Good morning, sweetheart," I replied, forcing a smile that I hoped looked genuine. "Did you sleep well?" She shrugged, wrapping her hands around her mug in the same way I held mine, a gesture she had learned from me years ago. "Not really," she said. I kept waking up. "I think I heard Dad coming late again." My chest tightened at her words, but I kept my expression neutral. "He had a work thing," I said, the lie sliding easily off my tongue after so many months of practice. "You know how it is." Emma looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes that made me uncomfortable, a knowing, a sadness, as if she could see right through my carefully constructed facade. "Yeah," she said softly. "I know how it is." We stood there in silence for a moment, sipping our coffee, and I wondered what she was thinking, what she knew or suspected. The kitchen felt smaller somehow, the walls pressing in, and I had the sudden urge to run, to leave this house and this life and start over somewhere far away where no one knew my name or my failures. But I stayed rooted to the spot, because that is what mothers do. We stay. We endure. We protect our children even when it costs us everything. The sound of another set of footsteps broke the silence, heavier this time, and my son Marcus appeared in the doorway. At 19, he was tall and broad-shouldered, with his father's dark eyes and my stubborn chin. He had been living at home while attending community college, saving money for a transfer to a 4-year university, and I was grateful for his presence, even though I knew he was restless, eager to spread his wings and fly. "Morning," he mumbled, heading straight for the refrigerator. He pulled out a carton of orange juice and drank directly from it, ignoring my disapproving look. Emma rolled her eyes but said nothing. These small rebellions had become so common that I no longer had the energy to fight them. Your father should be down soon, I said, glancing at the clock on the wall. It was nearly 7:30, and Daniel usually left for work by 8. We should have breakfast together. Marcus closed the refrigerator and leaned against it, crossing his arms over his chest. Is he actually here? He asked, and there was an edge to his voice that I did not like. I thought I heard him leave again around 3 in the morning. My stomach dropped. You must have been dreaming, I said quickly. He has been here all night. Marcus and Emma exchanged a look, one of those silent conversations that siblings have, and I felt a flash of anger mixed with fear. They were talking about me, about us, about the cracks that were showing in our family's foundation, and I hated that they could see what I had been trying so hard to hide. Before I could say anything else, Daniel appeared in the doorway, looking tired but put together in his work clothes, a button-down shirt and slacks that I had ironed the night before. His hair was still damp from the shower, and he smelled of soap and aftershave, familiar scents that used to comfort me but now only made me feel hollow. Good morning, everyone, he said with forced cheerfulness, moving to pour himself coffee. His hand brushed against mine as he reached for the pot, and I flinched, pulling away before I could stop myself. He noticed, I could tell by the way his jaw tightened, but he said nothing. We stood there, the four of us, in that small kitchen that had once been the heart of our home, and the silence was suffocating. I could feel the weight of all the things we were not saying, all the secrets and lies and betrayals that hung in the air like smoke, invisible but choking. I need to talk to you, Emma said suddenly, looking at me. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the tremor underneath, the nervousness that she was trying to hide. Alone. Daniel looked up sharply, his eyes moving between Emma and me. Can it wait? He asked. I have a meeting at 9. No, Emma said, her gaze never leaving mine. It cannot wait. My heart began to race, a sick feeling spreading through my chest. Okay, I said, setting down my coffee mug with a hand that shook slightly. Let us go to the living room. Emma led the way, and I followed, feeling Daniel's and Marcus's eyes on my back. The living room was dim, the curtains still drawn against the morning light, and the air was cool, almost cold. Emma sat down on the couch, and I took the chair across from her, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. What is it, sweetheart? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm even though my mind was racing with possibilities, each one worse than the last. Emma took a deep breath, and I could see her gathering her courage, steeling herself for whatever she was about to say. Mom, she began, and then stopped, her eyes filling with tears. I do not know how to tell you this. Just say it, I whispered, my throat tight. Whatever it is, just say it. She looked down at her hands, twisting them together in her lap. I know about Dad, she said quietly. I know what he has been doing. The room seemed to tilt, and I gripped the arms of the chair to steady myself. What are you talking about? I asked, but my voice sounded hollow, unconvincing, even to my own ears. Emma looked up at me, and the pain in her eyes was so raw, so deep, that it took my breath away. I know he is having an affair, she said. I have known for months. The words hung in the air between us, and I felt something inside me crack, a fissure that had been forming for so long finally splitting wide open. I wanted to deny it, to tell her she was wrong, to protect her from this ugly truth, but I could not find the words. Instead, I just sat there, staring at her, feeling the weight of my own failure pressing down on me like a physical thing. How did you find out? I finally managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Emma wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. I saw them together, she said. About 4 months ago. I was downtown, meeting a friend for lunch, and I saw Dad with a woman. They were at a restaurant, sitting close, holding hands. At first, I thought maybe I was mistaken, that it was someone who just looked like him, but then he kissed her, and I knew. The image she painted was like a knife to my heart, sharp and brutal. I had suspected, of course. The late nights, the distant behavior, the way he barely looked at me anymore. But suspecting and knowing are two different things, and hearing it confirmed by my daughter made it real in a way that I had been desperately trying to avoid. "Why did you not tell me?" I asked, and I could hear the hurt in my own voice. Emma's face crumpled. "Because I did not want to hurt you," she said, her voice breaking. "Because I thought maybe it would end, that he would come to his senses and it would just go away. And because I was scared. Scared of what it would mean for our family, for you, for all of us." I stood up then, needing to move, needing to do something with the energy that was coursing through my body. I walked to the window and pulled back the curtain, letting the morning light flood the room. Outside, the neighborhood was waking up. I could see Mrs. Henderson across the street watering her garden, and the Johnson kids waiting for the school bus on the corner. Everything looked so normal, so ordinary, and I felt a surge of anger at the unfairness of it all. How could the world just keep turning when mine was falling apart? "There is more," Emma said behind me, and something in her tone made my blood run cold. I turned to face her, and the look on her face told me that whatever she was about to say was going to be even worse than what she had already revealed. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice shaking. Emma stood up and walked over to me, taking my hands in hers. They were cold, trembling. "Mom," she said, and I could see the tears streaming down her face now, unchecked. "The woman he is seeing. It is someone you know." My mind raced through possibilities. A coworker? A neighbor? Someone from church? Each option felt like a betrayal, but I needed to know. "Who?" I demanded. "Who is it?" Emma squeezed my hands tighter, as if she could somehow soften the blow of what she was about to say. "It is Aunt Rachel," she whispered. For a moment, I could not process the words. They did not make sense. Rachel was my sister, my younger sister, the one I had protected and defended our entire lives. When our parents died in a car accident 15 years ago, I had been the one to help her through it, to make sure she was okay, to be there for her when she had no one else. We had been close, or so I thought. She came to our house for holidays, babysat the kids when they were younger, called me every week just to chat. The idea that she could do this, that she could betray me in such a fundamental way, was incomprehensible. "No," I said, shaking my head. "No, that is not possible. You must be mistaken." Emma's grip on my hands tightened. "I am not mistaken, Mom. I saw them. I saw her. And I have seen them together since then, more than once. I followed Dad one night, and he went to her apartment. He was there for hours." I pulled my hands away from Emma's and stumbled backward, my legs suddenly weak. I sank back into the chair, my mind reeling. Rachel. My sister. The woman I had loved and protected and trusted more than almost anyone in the world. How could she do this to me? How could he? The room felt like it was spinning, and I closed my eyes, trying to steady myself. I could hear Emma crying, could feel her presence beside me, but I could not reach out to her. I was drowning in my own pain, my own shock, and I had nothing left to give. How long? I finally asked, opening my eyes to look at Emma. How long has this been going on? Emma wiped at her face, trying to compose herself. I do not know for sure, she said. But based on what I have seen, at least 6 months. Maybe longer. 6 months. Half a year. All those times Rachel had called, had come over for dinner, had hugged me and told me she loved me, she had been sleeping with my husband. All those times Daniel had said he was working late, had kissed me goodbye in the morning with that distant look in his eyes, he had been thinking of her. The betrayal was so complete, so total, that I felt like I might shatter into a million pieces. Does Marcus know? I asked, my voice hoarse. Emma shook her head. I have not told him. I wanted to tell you first. I thought you deserved to hear it from me, not from gossip or by accident. I nodded, grateful for that small mercy at least. We sat there in silence for a long moment, and I could hear the sounds of the house around us, the ticking of the clock on the mantel, the hum of the heating system, the distant murmur of voices from the kitchen where Daniel and Marcus were still talking. Everything sounded so normal, so everyday, and yet nothing would ever be normal again. What are you going to do? Emma asked softly. I looked at her, at this beautiful, brave young woman who had carried this terrible secret for months, trying to protect me, and I felt a surge of love so strong it almost overwhelmed the pain. I do not know, I admitted. I need time to think. But even as I said it, I knew that time would not make this easier. Time would not erase the betrayal or heal the wounds. Time would only give me more opportunities to imagine them together, to picture the moments they had shared while I was at home, oblivious and trusting. I stood up, my legs still shaky but holding. I need to talk to your father, I said. Alone. Emma nodded, her face pale. Do you want me to stay home today? I can call in sick to work. I shook my head. No, sweetheart. Go to work. Live your life. This is not your burden to carry. But it is, she said, her voice breaking again. You are my mother. Your pain is my pain. I pulled her into a hug then, holding her tight, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and feeling the warmth of her body against mine. Thank you for telling me, I whispered into her hair. I know it was not easy. She hugged me back, and for a moment, we just stood there, two women bound by blood and love and shared sorrow. Then she pulled away, wiping at her eyes one more time. I love you, Mom, she said. I love you too, baby, I replied. More than you will ever know. She left the room, and I heard her footsteps on the stairs, heard the sound of her bedroom door closing. I stood there alone in the living room, the morning light streaming through the window, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the air. I felt hollow, emptied out, as if someone had reached inside me and scooped out everything that made me who I was. I walked back to the kitchen, my footsteps heavy on the hardwood floor. Daniel was still there, sitting at the table with his coffee, scrolling through his phone. Marcus had left, probably gone back upstairs to his room. Daniel looked up when I entered, and I saw something flicker in his eyes, a wariness, as if he sensed that something had changed. We need to talk, I said, my voice flat and emotionless. He set down his phone, his expression guarded. Okay, he said. What about? I pulled out a chair and sat down across from him, folding my hands on the table. I know, I said simply. His face went pale, and I saw the guilt flash across his features before he could hide it. Know what? He asked, but his voice was weak, unconvincing. I know about Rachel, I said, and the words felt like poison on my tongue. I know you have been having an affair with my sister. He closed his eyes, his shoulders sagging as if a great weight had been placed on them. Catherine, he began, but I held up my hand to stop him. Do not, I said, my voice shaking with barely controlled rage. Do not you dare try to explain or justify or make excuses. Just tell me the truth. How long? He opened his eyes, and I saw tears there, but I felt no sympathy. 6 months, he said quietly. It started 6 months ago. How? I demanded. How did this even happen? He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I had seen 1,000 times before, usually when he was stressed or upset. It just happened, he said. We ran into each other at a conference. We had drinks, we talked, and one thing led to another. One thing led to another, I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. That is your explanation? It just happened? As if you had no choice, no control, no responsibility? He flinched at my tone. I am sorry, he said. I know that does not mean much, but I am. I never meant to hurt you. But you did, I said, my voice rising. You hurt me in the worst possible way. And not just me. You hurt our children. You hurt our family. And you did it with my sister, Daniel. My sister. The person I trusted most in the world after you. I know, he said, and now the tears were falling freely down his face. I know, and I hate myself for it. I have hated myself every single day. Then why did you keep doing it? I demanded. If you hated yourself so much, why did you not stop? He looked down at his hands, unable to meet my eyes. Because I am weak, he said. Because I am selfish. Because I fell in love with her. The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. I had expected many things, but not that. Not love. An affair I could maybe, eventually, understand. A moment of weakness, a mistake, even a series of mistakes. But love? That was something else entirely. That was a choice, a commitment, a betrayal that went far deeper than physical infidelity. You love her, I said, my voice barely a whisper. He nodded, still not looking at me. I did not mean to, he said. I did not plan it. But yes, I love her. I stood up so quickly that my chair scraped loudly against the floor. Get out, I said. He looked up at me, his eyes wide. Catherine, please, let us talk about this. There is nothing to talk about, I said, my voice cold and hard. You made your choice. You chose her. So get out of my house. This is my house too, he said, a flash of anger crossing his face. I do not care, I said. Get out, or I will call the police and have you removed. He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him weighing his options, deciding whether to fight or flee. Finally, he stood up, his movements slow and defeated. I will go, he said. But we are going to have to talk about this eventually. We have children, a life together. We cannot just throw it all away. You already threw it away, I said. The moment you touched her, you threw it all away. He opened his mouth as if to argue, then closed it again. He walked past me, and I could smell his aftershave, that familiar scent that now made me feel sick. I heard him go upstairs, heard the sounds of him moving around in our bedroom, packing a bag. Marcus's door opened, and I heard their voices, low and tense, but I could not make out the words. Then Daniel was coming back down the stairs, a duffel bag in his hand. He paused in the doorway of the kitchen, looking at me one last time. "I am sorry, Catherine," he said. "For what it is worth, I am truly sorry." I turned away from him, staring out the window at the bright morning, at the world that kept spinning despite my pain. I heard the front door open and close, heard his car start in the driveway, heard the sound of it pulling away. And then he was gone, and I was alone in the kitchen where we had shared so many meals, so many conversations, so many moments of ordinary life that I had thought would last forever. I sank down into the chair, my legs finally giving out, and I let myself cry. Great, heaving sobs that shook my whole body, tears that I had been holding back for so long finally breaking free. I cried for my marriage, for the man I had loved and trusted and built a life with. I cried for my sister, for the relationship we had shared, for the bond that had been shattered beyond repair. I cried for my children, who would have to navigate this mess, who would have to choose sides and deal with the fallout. And I cried for myself, for the woman I had been, the one who had believed in love and loyalty and family, the one who had thought she was safe. I do not know how long I sat there, but eventually the tears slowed, then stopped. I felt empty, wrung out, but also strangely calm. The worst had happened. The secret was out. There was no more pretending, no more hiding. Now I just had to figure out how to move forward. I heard footsteps on the stairs again, and Marcus appeared in the doorway. His face was pale, his eyes red, and I knew that Daniel had told him, or that he had figured it out on his own. He walked over to me and knelt down beside my chair, taking my hand in his. "Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I am so sorry." I squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his presence. "It is not your fault, sweetheart," I said. "None of this is your fault. What are we going to do?" He asked, and I could hear the fear in his voice, the uncertainty. He was still so young, still figuring out his place in the world, and now his foundation had been ripped out from under him. "I do not know yet," I admitted. "But we will figure it out. Together. You, me, and Emma. We will get through this." He nodded, and I could see him trying to be brave, trying to be strong for me. I wanted to tell him that he did not have to be, that it was okay to be hurt and angry and confused, but I knew he needed to feel useful, needed to feel like he could help somehow. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Emma came home from work early, and the three of us sat together in the living room, talking and crying and trying to make sense of what had happened. We ordered pizza for dinner because none of us had the energy to cook, and we ate it in silence, the television playing in the background, unwatched. That night, I lay in my bed, the one I had shared with Daniel for over 20 years, and I could not sleep. The sheets smelled like him, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw images of him with Rachel, their hands intertwined, their lips meeting, their bodies pressed together. I got up and stripped the bed, throwing the sheets in the washing machine and remaking it with fresh ones. But even then, I could not escape the memories, the ghosts that haunted every corner of this house. The next morning, I woke up early, my body aching from lack of sleep and emotional exhaustion. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. I knew I needed to call Rachel, needed to confront her, but I could not bring myself to do it. What would I even say? How do you talk to someone who has betrayed you so completely? But I knew I could not avoid it forever. So I picked up my phone and dialed her number, my hand shaking as I pressed the call button. It rang once, twice, 3 times, and I almost hung up, almost chickened out. But then she answered, her voice bright and cheerful, completely oblivious to the storm that was about to hit her. "Hey, Kath," she said, using the nickname she had called me since we were kids. "What is up?" "I know," I said, my voice cold and flat. "I know about you and Daniel." There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and I could almost hear her mind racing, trying to figure out what to say, how to respond. Finally, she spoke, her voice small and scared. "Kath, I can explain." "No," I said, cutting her off. "You cannot explain. There is no explanation that would make this okay. You slept with my husband, Rachel." "My husband? How could you do that to me?" I heard her start to cry, soft, hiccuping sobs that once would have made me want to comfort her, to make her feel better. But now they just made me angry. "I am sorry," she said through her tears. "I am so sorry. I never meant for this to happen." "But it did happen," I said. "And you let it. You made a choice, every single time you were with him, to betray me. To betray our family. To betray everything we have ever been to each other." "I love him," she said, and her voice was desperate, pleading. "I know that does not make it right, but I love him, Kath. I have loved him for years." The words hit me like a slap, and I felt my anger surge, hot and fierce. "Years?" I repeated. "You have loved him for years? How long have you been lying to me, Rachel? How long have you been pretending to be my sister while secretly wanting my husband?" "I did not plan it," she said. "I did not want to feel this way. But I could not help it. And when we finally got together, it felt right. It felt like we were meant to be." "Meant to be," I said, my voice dripping with contempt. "You destroyed my marriage, my family, my life, and you think it is because you were meant to be together? You are delusional, Rachel. And you are selfish. You always have been." "That is not fair," she said, her voice rising. "You do not understand what it has been like for me, always living in your shadow, always being the younger sister, the one who was not as smart or as successful or as put together. You have always had everything, Kath. The perfect husband, the perfect kids, the perfect life. And I had nothing. So you decided to take what was mine?" I asked, incredulous. "That is your justification? That you were jealous?" "It is not that simple," she said. "Daniel and I, we connected. We understood each other. He was unhappy in your marriage, Kath. He told me so. He said you had grown apart, that you did not talk anymore, that you were more like roommates than husband and wife." Her words stung because there was a grain of truth in them. Daniel and I had grown apart over the years. We had gotten caught up in the routines of daily life, and raising kids and paying bills and managing a household. We had stopped making time for each other, stopped really seeing each other. But that did not excuse what they had done. That did not make it okay. So instead of talking to me about it, instead of trying to work on our marriage, he ran to you, I said. And you welcomed him with open arms, never mind that he was married to your sister. "I love him," she repeated, as if that explained everything, as if love was a justification for betrayal. "I do not care," I said, my voice breaking. "I do not care if you love him or if he loves you or if you think you are soulmates. You are my sister, Rachel. You were supposed to be on my side. You were supposed to protect me, not hurt me. I know, she whispered. I know, and I am sorry. I wish I could take it back, but I cannot. You are right, I said. You cannot. And I will never forgive you for this. Never. Do not call me, do not come to my house, do not try to contact my children. As far as I am concerned, you are dead to me. Kath, please, she said, her voice desperate. Please do not do this. You are all the family I have left. You should have thought of that before you slept with my husband, I said, and then I hung up, my hand shaking so badly that I almost dropped the phone. I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone, feeling the weight of what I had just done. I had cut my sister out of my life, severed the bond that had connected us since birth. It felt both liberating and devastating, like I had amputated a part of myself to save the rest. Over the next few weeks, I began the process of disentangling my life from Daniel's. I met with a lawyer, a kind woman named Margaret who had been recommended by a friend. She explained my options, talked me through the divorce process, and helped me understand what I was entitled to. It was all so clinical, so businesslike, reducing 23 years of marriage to a series of legal documents and financial calculations. Daniel tried to call me several times, but I did not answer. He sent texts, long rambling messages about how sorry he was, how he wanted to work things out, how he still cared about me. But his words rang hollow. He had made his choice, and now he had to live with the consequences. Emma and Marcus were struggling too, each in their own way. Emma threw herself into her work, staying late at the office, taking on extra projects, anything to avoid being home and facing the reality of what had happened. Marcus became withdrawn, spending most of his time in his room, his grades at school starting to slip. I tried to be there for them, to provide stability and support, but I was barely holding myself together. Some days, it took everything I had just to get out of bed, to put one foot in front of the other and keep moving forward. One evening, about a month after Daniel had left, I was sitting in the living room, going through old photo albums. I do not know why I was torturing myself like that, looking at pictures of happier times, of family vacations and birthday parties and holidays. But I could not seem to stop. I was looking at a photo from our 10th anniversary, Daniel and me dressed up for a fancy dinner, smiling at the camera, when Emma came and sat down beside me. "Are you okay, Mom?" she asked softly. I looked at her, at this beautiful young woman who had been forced to grow up too fast, to carry burdens that should never have been hers. "No," I said honestly. "I am not okay. But I will be. Eventually." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and we sat there together, looking at the photos, mourning the family we used to be. "I miss how things were," she said quietly. "I miss when we were all happy." "Me too, sweetheart," I said, wrapping my arm around her. "Me too." But even as I said it, I wondered if we had ever really been as happy as I remembered. Had there always been cracks in the foundation that I had been too blind to see? Had Daniel been unhappy for years, just going through the motions, waiting for something or someone to come along and give him a reason to leave? Or had Rachel been right, and we had simply grown apart, become strangers living under the same roof? I did not have the answers, and maybe I never would. All I knew was that my life had been turned upside down, and I had to find a way to rebuild it, to create something new from the wreckage of what had been. 2 months after Daniel left, I was at the grocery store, pushing my cart down the cereal aisle, when I saw her. Rachel. She was standing by the granola, reading the label on a box, and she looked thinner than I remembered, her face drawn and tired. For a moment, I considered turning around, avoiding her, but something made me stay. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was the need for closure, but I found myself walking toward her. She looked up as I approached, and I saw the fear flash across her face. "Kath," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Rachel," I replied, my tone neutral. We stood there for a moment, two sisters who had once been so close, now separated by a chasm of hurt and betrayal. She looked like she wanted to say something, but the words seemed to stick in her throat. "How are you?" she finally asked, and the question was so absurd, so inadequate, that I almost laughed. "How do you think I am?" I said. "My husband left me for my sister. My marriage is over. My family is broken. How do you think I am?" She flinched at my words, her eyes filling with tears. "I am sorry," she said. "I know I have said it before, but I am. I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did," I said. "And you cannot undo it. You cannot take it back. So what do you want from me, Rachel? Forgiveness? Absolution? Because I cannot give you that. I just want you to know that I am sorry," she said, the tears now streaming down her face. "And that I miss you. I miss my sister." I felt a pang in my chest, a flicker of the love I had once felt for her, but I pushed it down. "I miss my sister too," I said. "But she is gone. The person you are now, the person who could do what you did, that is not my sister. That is a stranger." She sobbed then, a broken, desperate sound, and I felt a moment of pity for her. But I could not let myself soften, could not let myself be drawn back into her orbit. I had to protect myself, had to maintain the boundaries I had set. "I have to go," I said, turning away from her. "Wait," she called after me. "Please, Kath. Just tell me one thing. Is there any chance, any possibility, that someday you might be able to forgive me?" I stopped and looked back at her, at this woman who had once been my best friend, my confidant, my family. "I do not know," I said honestly. "Maybe someday. But not today. Not for a long time." And then I walked away, leaving her standing there in the cereal aisle, and I did not look back. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. It was a cold day in February, the sky gray and heavy with the promise of snow. I sat in the courtroom with Margaret beside me, listening as the judge read through the terms of the settlement. Daniel was there too, sitting on the other side of the room with his own lawyer, and I could feel his eyes on me, but I did not look at him. I could not. When it was over, when the judge had signed the papers and declared our marriage officially dissolved, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief that it was finally done, that I could start moving forward. Sadness for everything we had lost, for the dreams that had died, for the family that would never be whole again. I walked out of the courthouse into the cold February air, and I took a deep breath, feeling the chill fill my lungs. Emma and Marcus were waiting for me on the steps, and they came over and hugged me, the three of us standing there together, a new kind of family, smaller and scarred but still standing. "It is over," I said, and my voice was steady, strong. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "Now we move forward," I said. "We build a new life. We figure out who we are without him." And we did. Slowly, painfully, we began to heal. Emma started seeing a therapist, working through her own feelings about the betrayal and the divorce. Marcus refocused on his studies, his grades improving as he found his footing again. And I started to rediscover who I was outside of being a wife, outside of being part of a couple. I took up painting, something I had loved as a young woman but had given up when life got busy. I joined a book club, made new friends, women who understood what it was like to start over, to rebuild from the ground up. 6 months after the divorce, I was in my studio, a small room I had converted from the guest bedroom, working on a painting of a sunrise. The colors were bright and bold, oranges and pinks and golds, and as I worked, I felt a sense of peace that I had not felt in a long time. The house was quiet, Emma and Marcus both out with friends, and I was alone with my thoughts and my art. My phone buzzed, and I glanced at it, expecting a text from one of the kids. But it was from Daniel. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the screen, debating whether to read it or delete it. Finally, curiosity won out, and I opened the message. Catherine, I wanted you to know that Rachel and I are getting married. I know this is probably hard for you to hear, but I thought you deserved to know. I hope that someday you can find it in your heart to be happy for us. We never meant to hurt you, and we both still care about you very much. I stared at the message, reading it over and over, and I waited for the pain, for the anger, for the jealousy. But it did not come. Instead, I felt nothing. Or maybe not nothing, but something close to indifference. They were getting married. They were building a life together. And I did not care. I set down my phone and picked up my paintbrush, adding another stroke of gold to the sunrise. They could have each other. They could have their love story, built on lies and betrayal. I had something better. I had my children, my art, my freedom. I had myself. And that, I realized, was enough. But life, as I was learning, has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. 3 weeks after Daniel's text, I was at home, making dinner, when there was a knock at the door. I wiped my hands on a towel and went to answer it, expecting a delivery or maybe a neighbor. But when I opened the door, I found myself face to face with a woman I did not recognize. She was young, maybe in her early 30s, with long dark hair and nervous eyes. "Can I help you?" I asked, confused. "Are you Catherine?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. "Yes," I said. "Who are you?" She took a deep breath, as if steeling herself. "My name is Jennifer," she said. "And I think we need to talk about Daniel." My stomach dropped, and I felt a sense of dread wash over me. "What about Daniel?" I asked, though part of me did not want to know the answer. "Can I come in?" she asked. This is not really a conversation for the doorstep. I hesitated, every instinct telling me to close the door, to send her away, to protect myself from whatever bomb she was about to drop. But curiosity and a strange sense of inevitability made me step aside and let her in. We sat in the living room, the same room where Emma had told me about Daniel and Rachel, and I felt a sense of déjà vu, as if I was trapped in some terrible cycle that I could not escape. "What is this about?" I asked, my voice tight. Jennifer twisted her hands in her lap, clearly uncomfortable. "I do not know how to say this," she began. "So I am just going to say it. Daniel and I had an affair. It started about a year ago and ended 3 months ago." I stared at her, trying to process her words. A year ago. That meant he had been seeing her at the same time he was seeing Rachel. Maybe even before Rachel. "You had an affair with my husband," I said slowly, and my voice sounded strange to my own ears, distant and hollow. Yes, she said, and I could see tears forming in her eyes. I did not know he was married at first. He told me he was divorced. By the time I found out the truth, I was already in too deep. I loved him. Another woman who loved him. Another woman he had lied to, manipulated, betrayed. I felt a surge of anger, not at her, but at him. At Daniel, who had destroyed so many lives in his selfish pursuit of whatever it was he thought he needed. Why are you telling me this? I asked. The divorce is final. Daniel and I are done. What does it matter now? Jennifer looked up at me, and I saw desperation in her eyes. Because he is doing it again, she said. He is with your sister now, and he is telling her the same lies he told me, making her the same promises. And I think she deserves to know the truth. I think you both do. What truth? I asked, though I was not sure I wanted to hear it. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folder, handing it to me. I opened it and found photographs, dozens of them, of Daniel with different women. Some I recognized, some I did not. There were receipts from hotels, restaurants, jewelry stores. There were text messages, printed out, showing conversations with multiple women, all of them intimate, all of them suggesting ongoing relationships. I have been tracking him, Jennifer said quietly. After we broke up, I could not let it go. I needed to understand who he really was, what he was really doing. And what I found was that he is a serial cheater, Catherine. He has been doing this for years, maybe your entire marriage. Rachel is not special. I was not special. We are just the latest in a long line of women he has used and discarded. I felt numb, looking at the evidence spread out before me. All those years, all those times he had said he was working late or traveling for business, he had been with other women. Our entire marriage had been a lie, built on a foundation of deception and betrayal so deep that I could not even begin to comprehend it. Why are you showing me this? I asked again, my voice barely a whisper. Because I think your sister should know what she is getting into, Jennifer said. And because I think you deserve to know that none of this was your fault. He is broken, Catherine. There is something wrong with him, something that makes him incapable of being faithful, of truly loving anyone. And I did not want you to spend the rest of your life wondering what you did wrong, because you did not do anything wrong. This is all on him. I looked at her, at this stranger who had come to my door with the truth I had not known I needed, and I felt a strange sense of gratitude mixed with sadness. Thank you, I said. I know this could not have been easy for you. She shook her head. It was not, she admitted. But I needed to do it. For me, and for you, and for all the other women he has hurt. After she left, I sat alone in the living room, surrounded by the evidence of Daniel's betrayals, and I felt a strange sense of clarity. This was not about me. It had never been about me. Daniel's infidelity, his lies, his inability to be faithful, those were his failings, not mine. I had been a good wife, a good mother, a good person. And he had thrown it all away, not because I was not enough, but because he was fundamentally broken. I picked up my phone and called Emma. When she answered, I could hear music in the background, the sound of laughter and conversation. She was out with friends, living her life, and I almost hung up, not wanting to burden her with this new revelation. But she deserved to know the truth, just as I had. Emma, I said when she answered, I need you to come home. There is something I need to show you. An hour later, Emma and Marcus were both home, sitting on the couch, looking at the folder Jennifer had left. I watched their faces as they processed the information, saw the shock, the anger, the hurt play across their features. When they were done, Emma looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears. "I cannot believe this," she said. "All this time, we thought it was just Aunt Rachel. But it was so many others." Marcus was silent, his jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists. I wanted to reach out to him, to comfort him, but I knew he needed space to process this in his own way. "What are we going to do?" Emma asked. I took a deep breath. "I am going to give this information to my lawyer," I said. "See if there is any way to reopen the divorce settlement. He lied about his assets, about his spending. There might be grounds for a new agreement." "And Aunt Rachel?" Emma asked. "Are you going to tell her?" I thought about it, about Rachel and the life she thought she was building with Daniel. Part of me wanted to let her find out on her own, to let her experience the same pain and betrayal I had. But another part of me, the part that still remembered the little girl who had looked up to me, who had trusted me to protect her, knew that I had to tell her. Not for her sake, but for mine. Because I needed to be the kind of person who did the right thing, even when it was hard, even when the person did not deserve it. "Yes," I said. "I am going to tell her." The next day, I drove to Rachel's apartment, the folder of evidence on the passenger seat beside me. My hands were shaking as I knocked on her door, and when she opened it, I saw the surprise and fear flash across her face. "Kath," she said, her voice uncertain. "What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you," I said. "Can I come in?" She hesitated, then stepped aside, letting me into the small apartment she had been living in since the affair started. It was neat and tidy, decorated in soft colors, and I could see touches of Daniel everywhere, his jacket on the back of a chair, his shoes by the door, a photo of the two of them on the mantel. I sat down on the couch, and Rachel sat across from me, her hands folded in her lap, her expression wary. "What is this about?" she asked. I handed her the folder. "You need to see this," I said. She opened it, and I watched as her face went pale, as her hands started to shake. She flipped through the photos, the receipts, the text messages, and with each page, I could see her world crumbling, just as mine had. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "A woman named Jennifer came to see me," I said. "She was one of Daniel's other affairs. There have been many, Rachel. Many women, over many years. You were not special. You were just another in a long line." Rachel looked up at me, and I saw the devastation in her eyes, the realization that everything she thought she knew, everything she thought she had, was a lie. "He told me he loved me," she said, her voice breaking. "He said I was the only one, that what we had was real." "He lied," I said simply. "He has been lying to everyone, including me, for years. This is who he is, Rachel. This is what he does." She started to cry then, great heaving sobs that shook her whole body, and I felt a pang of sympathy for her despite everything she had done to me. She had been used, just as I had been used, just as all those other women had been used. Daniel was the villain in this story, not her. Or at least, not only her. "What am I going to do?" she asked through her tears. "You are going to leave him," I said. "You are going to walk away and build a life for yourself, a real life, not one based on lies and stolen moments." "But I love him," she said, and the words sounded hollow, even to her. "No, you do not," I said gently. "You love the idea of him, the person you thought he was. But that person does not exist. He never did. She looked at me, and I could see her struggling, trying to hold on to the fantasy she had built, the dream of a life with Daniel. But the evidence was right there in front of her, undeniable and damning. "I am sorry," she said finally, her voice small and broken. "I am so sorry for everything I did to you, for the pain I caused. You were right. I was selfish and cruel, and I do not deserve your forgiveness." "No, you do not," I agreed. "But I am giving it to you anyway. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to let go of the anger and the hurt. I deserve to move on with my life, and I cannot do that if I am still holding on to what you did." She looked at me with surprise and gratitude, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of the sister I had once known, the one I had loved before all of this happened. "Thank you," she whispered. I stood up to leave, and she stood too, following me to the door. "Will I ever see you again?" she asked, and there was hope in her voice, fragile and tentative. "I do not know," I said honestly. "Maybe someday. But not now. I need time, and you need to figure out who you are without Daniel, without me, without anyone else defining you." She nodded, wiping at her tears. "I understand," she said. I walked out of her apartment and back to my car, and as I drove away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had done what I needed to do. I had told her the truth, given her the information she needed to make her own choices. What she did with it was up to her. Over the next few months, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Rachel had ended things with Daniel, that she had moved to another city to start fresh. Daniel, meanwhile, had apparently moved on to yet another woman, continuing his pattern of deception and betrayal. I felt sorry for whoever she was, this new victim, but I also knew that it was not my responsibility to save her. I had saved myself, and that was enough. My life continued to evolve and change. Emma got a promotion at work and moved into her own apartment, a small but cozy place that she decorated with pride. Marcus transferred to a 4-year university, pursuing a degree in engineering, and I could see him growing into the man he was meant to be, confident and capable. And I continued to paint, to explore this new creative side of myself that I had neglected for so long. 1 year after the divorce, I had my first art show, a small exhibition at a local gallery. I was nervous, terrified that no one would come, that no one would like my work. But the gallery was packed, filled with friends and neighbors and even some strangers who had seen the advertisement and were curious. Emma and Marcus were there, of course, standing by my side, proud and supportive. As I stood there, looking at my paintings hanging on the walls, I felt a sense of accomplishment and pride that I had not felt in years. These were mine. I had created them, poured my heart and soul into them, and they were beautiful. Not perfect, but beautiful in their imperfection, in their honesty. A man approached me, tall and distinguished looking, with kind eyes and a warm smile. "These are remarkable," he said, gesturing to the paintings. "You have a real gift." "Thank you," I said, feeling my cheeks flush with pleasure. "I am Robert," he said, extending his hand. "I own a gallery downtown, and I would love to talk to you about doing a larger show there." I shook his hand, feeling a thrill of excitement. "I would like that," I said. We exchanged contact information, and as he walked away, I felt Emma's arm slip through mine. "Look at you," she said, her voice filled with pride. "Starting a whole new chapter." I smiled at her, at this incredible young woman who had been through so much and had come out stronger on the other side. "We all are," I said. All of us. That night, after the show was over and everyone had gone home, I sat in my living room with a glass of wine, reflecting on the past year. It had been the hardest year of my life, filled with pain and betrayal and loss. But it had also been a year of growth, of discovery, of learning who I was when I was not defined by my relationship to someone else. I thought about Daniel, about the man I had loved and trusted and built a life with. I wondered if he ever thought about me, if he ever regretted what he had done. But mostly, I realized, I did not care. He was part of my past, a chapter that had closed, and I was ready to move forward into whatever came next. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts, stopping at Rachel's name. I had not spoken to her since that day in her apartment, had not reached out or responded to the few tentative messages she had sent. But now, sitting here in the quiet of my home, I felt a stirring of something that might have been forgiveness, or at least the beginning of it. I typed out a message, my fingers hovering over the send button. Hey. I heard you moved. I hope you are doing well. Maybe we can talk sometime. When we are both ready. I hit send before I could second guess myself, and then I set down my phone and took a sip of my wine. I did not know if she would respond, did not know if we would ever be able to rebuild what we had lost. But I knew that I was open to the possibility, and that was enough for now. My phone buzzed a few minutes later, and I looked down to see a message from Rachel. Thank you for reaching out. I would like that. I am sorry, Kath. For everything. I am working on being a better person. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. Me too, I typed back. Me too. As I sat there, looking around at the home I had built, at the life I was creating, I realized that I was happy. Not the naive, unexamined happiness I had felt before, when I thought my life was perfect and secure. But a deeper, more resilient happiness, one that came from knowing myself, from surviving the worst and coming out the other side. I had been betrayed by the people I loved most, had my world turned upside down, had lost almost everything I thought defined me. But I had also discovered a strength I did not know I had, a creativity that had been dormant for years, and a capacity for forgiveness that surprised even me. Not everything is what it seems, I thought, remembering the title I had given to one of my paintings, a swirling abstract of dark colors that gradually lightened into bright, hopeful hues. What looks like an ending can be a beginning. What feels like destruction can be transformation. And what seems like betrayal can be the catalyst for becoming who you were always meant to be. I raised my glass in a silent toast to myself, to my children, to the future that stretched out before us, unknown and full of possibility. And then I took a sip, savoring the taste, savoring the moment, savoring the life I had fought so hard to reclaim. The weeks turned into months, and life settled into a new rhythm. I continued to paint, my work evolving as I processed my emotions through color and form. Robert, the gallery owner I had met at my show, became a friend and mentor, guiding me through the art world and introducing me to other artists. I found a community I had not known I was missing, people who understood the need to create, to express, to make sense of the world through art. Emma thrived in her new apartment, hosting dinner parties and building a life that was entirely her own. She started dating someone, a kind man named Alex who worked as a teacher, and I could see the happiness radiating from her when she talked about him. Marcus excelled at university, making the dean's list and joining a fraternity, finding his place in the world with a confidence that made my heart swell with pride. As for me, I was learning to be alone without being lonely. I took long walks in the park, read books that had been sitting on my shelf for years, traveled to places I had always wanted to see. I went to Paris and stood in front of the paintings at the Louvre, feeling a connection to the artists who had poured their souls onto canvas centuries ago. I went to the coast and watched the sun set over the ocean, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink that I tried to capture in my own work when I returned home. One afternoon, about 18 months after the divorce, I was in my studio working on a new piece when my phone rang. I glanced at the screen and saw an unfamiliar number. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello?" I said. "Catherine?" A woman's voice asked, tentative and uncertain. "Yes, this is Catherine," I replied. "Who is this?" "My name is Sarah," the woman said. "You do not know me, but I know about you. I am calling because I think you can help me." My stomach tightened, a familiar sense of dread washing over me. "Help you with what?" I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I already knew the answer. "With Daniel," she said, and I heard her voice crack. "I have been seeing him for the past 6 months, and I just found out he is engaged to someone else. I do not know what to do, and someone told me that you might understand, that you went through something similar." I closed my eyes, feeling a wave of sadness wash over me. Not for myself, but for this woman, this Sarah, who was just another victim in Daniel's endless cycle of deception. "Yes," I said quietly. "I understand. Can we meet?" she asked. "I just need to talk to someone who gets it, who knows what it is like." I hesitated, part of me wanting to say no, to protect myself from being dragged back into Daniel's orbit. But I remembered how alone I had felt, how isolated and confused, and I knew I could not turn her away. "Okay," I said. "Let us meet for coffee." We met the next day at a small cafe downtown. Sarah was younger than me, maybe in her mid-30s, with tired eyes and a defeated posture. We ordered our drinks and sat down at a corner table, and she told me her story. It was painfully familiar, the same lies, the same promises, the same pattern of manipulation and betrayal. She had believed him when he said he loved her, when he said she was special, when he said they had a future together. And now she was devastated, her world shattered, just as mine had been. I listened, offering comfort and understanding, sharing my own experience and the lessons I had learned. I told her about Jennifer, about Rachel, about all the other women who had been caught in Daniel's web. I told her that it was not her fault, that there was something broken in him that no amount of love or loyalty could fix. "How did you get through it?" she asked, her eyes filled with tears. "How did you survive?" I took a sip of my coffee, thinking about how to answer. "One day at a time," I said. I focused on the things I could control, on building a life for myself that did not depend on him or anyone else. I found things that brought me joy, that gave me purpose. And I learned to forgive, not for his sake, but for mine. "Do you think you will ever trust anyone again?" she asked. I thought about it, about the walls I had built around my heart, the caution I now approached relationships with. "I do not know," I admitted. "Maybe. But I am not in a hurry. I am learning to be happy on my own first, and if someone comes along who adds to that happiness rather than defining it, then maybe I will take that chance." She nodded, wiping at her eyes. "Thank you," she said, "for meeting with me, for sharing your story. It helps to know I am not alone." "You are not alone," I said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "And you will get through this. It will not be easy, and it will not be quick, but you will survive. And eventually, you will thrive." After we parted ways, I walked through the city, thinking about Daniel and the trail of broken hearts he had left in his wake. I wondered if he ever felt guilty, if he ever looked at himself in the mirror and saw the damage he had caused. But mostly, I realized I did not care. He was not my problem anymore. He was not my responsibility. I had my own life to live, my own happiness to pursue, and I was not going to let him take up any more space in my head or my heart. That evening, I had dinner with Emma and Marcus at my house. We cooked together, laughing and talking, the kitchen filled with the warm smells of garlic and herbs. As we sat down to eat, I looked at my children, at these incredible people they had become, and I felt a surge of gratitude so strong it brought tears to my eyes. "What is wrong, Mom?" Emma asked, noticing my expression. "Nothing is wrong," I said, smiling through my tears. "I am just happy. Happy to be here with you both, happy to have this life, happy to have survived everything we have been through." Marcus raised his glass. "To surviving," he said. "To thriving," Emma added. "To family," I said, and we clinked our glasses together, the sound ringing out in the quiet of the kitchen. Later that night, after Emma and Marcus had gone home, I stood in my studio, looking at the painting I had been working on. It was a portrait, not of anyone specific, but of a woman emerging from darkness into light. Her face was turned upward, her expression one of hope and determination, and as I looked at her, I realized she was me. Or rather, she was who I was becoming. I picked up my brush and added a few more strokes, deepening the shadows, brightening the highlights, bringing her more fully to life. And as I worked, I felt a sense of peace settle over me, a certainty that I was exactly where I was supposed to be, doing exactly what I was supposed to be doing. 2 years after the divorce, I received an invitation in the mail. It was from Rachel, inviting me to a small gathering at her new home. She had moved back to the area, she wrote, and she wanted to reconnect, to try to rebuild the relationship we had lost. She understood if I was not ready, she said, but she hoped I would consider it. I held the invitation in my hands, feeling the weight of the decision. Part of me wanted to throw it away, to maintain the distance I had worked so hard to create. But another part of me, the part that believed in second chances and the possibility of healing, wanted to go, to see if we could find our way back to each other. I called Emma and Marcus, asking for their advice. Emma was hesitant, still hurt by what Rachel had done, but she said she would support whatever decision I made. Marcus was more forgiving, saying that everyone deserved a chance to make amends, to prove they had changed. In the end, I decided to go. Not because I owed Rachel anything, but because I owed it to myself to see if forgiveness was possible, if the bond we had once shared could be repaired. The gathering was small, just a handful of people, and when I arrived, Rachel greeted me at the door. She looked different, older and more worn, but there was a softness in her eyes that had not been there before, a humility that spoke of hard lessons learned. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I know it was not easy." "No, it was not," I agreed. "But I am here." We spent the afternoon talking, really talking, for the first time in years. She told me about her life, about the therapy she had been in, about the work she had done to understand why she had made the choices she had. She apologized again, not with excuses or justifications, but with genuine remorse and a recognition of the pain she had caused. I told her about my life, about my art, about the journey I had been on to rediscover myself. I told her about Sarah and the other women who had reached out to me, about how I had found purpose in helping them navigate their own pain. As we talked, I felt something shift between us, a tentative reconnection, fragile but real. We were not the sisters we had been before, and we never would be. Too much had happened, too much had been broken. But maybe, I thought, we could be something new, something different, built on honesty and hard-won understanding rather than blind trust. When it was time to leave, Rachel walked me to my car. "I am glad you came," she said. "I have missed you." "I have missed you too," I admitted. "The you I used to know." "I am still figuring out who you are now." She nodded, accepting that. "I am still figuring that out too," she said. "But I am trying to be better. To do better." "That is all any of us can do," I said. I drove home as the sun was setting, the sky painted in brilliant shades of orange and red. I thought about the past 2 years, about everything I had lost and everything I had gained. I had been betrayed by the people I loved most, had my life torn apart, had faced pain I never thought I could survive. But I had survived. More than that, I had grown, had discovered parts of myself I never knew existed, had built a life that was richer and more authentic than the one I had before. Not everything is what it seems, I thought again, and I realized that the title applied not just to the betrayal, but to the aftermath as well. What had seemed like the end of my life had actually been the beginning of a new one. What had seemed like the worst thing that could happen had actually been the catalyst for the best thing, for finding myself, for learning what I was truly capable of. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw a figure sitting on my front porch. For a moment, my heart raced, thinking it might be Daniel, come to cause more trouble. But as I got closer, I realized it was Robert, the gallery owner, holding a bouquet of flowers. "I hope you do not mind me stopping by," he said as I approached. "I wanted to give you these and tell you that your new series has been selling incredibly well. People are really responding to your work." I took the flowers, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "Thank you," I said. "That means a lot." He smiled, and I noticed, not for the first time, how kind his eyes were, how genuine his interest seemed to be. "I was also wondering," he said, a bit hesitantly, "if you might like to have dinner with me sometime. Not as colleagues, but as two people who enjoy each other's company." I looked at him, at this man who had been nothing but supportive and encouraging, who had seen my work and appreciated it, who had never asked for anything in return. I thought about what I had told Sarah, about learning to be happy on my own first, about waiting for someone who added to that happiness rather than defining it. And I realized that maybe, just maybe, I was ready to take that chance. "I would like that," I said, and his smile widened. We made plans for the following week, and as he drove away, I stood on my porch, holding the flowers, feeling a flutter of excitement mixed with nervousness. I did not know where this would lead, did not know if Robert would be someone important in my life or just a pleasant interlude. But I was open to the possibility, and that felt like progress. Inside, I put the flowers in a vase and set them on the kitchen table, where they brightened the room with their vibrant colors. I made myself a cup of tea and sat down, looking around at the home I had made, at the life I had built from the ashes of my old one. My phone buzzed, and I looked down to see a text from Emma. "How did it go with Aunt Rachel?" "It was okay," I typed back. "We talked. It is going to take time, but I think we might be able to find our way back to each other. Eventually." "I am proud of you, Mom," she replied. "You are the strongest person I know." I smiled, feeling tears prick at my eyes. "I learned from the best," I typed. "You and your brother have been my rock through all of this. I could not have done it without you." "We love you, Mom," she replied. "Always." "I love you too," I typed back. "More than you will ever know." I set down my phone and took a sip of my tea, savoring the warmth, the quiet, the peace. Outside, the last light of day was fading, the sky turning from orange to purple to deep blue. Stars were beginning to appear, tiny pinpricks of light in the vast darkness, and I thought about how appropriate that was, how even in the darkest times, there was always light if you knew where to look for it. I had been betrayed by the one I protected most, by my sister, the person I had loved and defended and trusted above almost everyone else. But I had also been betrayed by my husband, by the man I had built a life with, by the person I thought I knew better than anyone. And in the aftermath of that betrayal, I had discovered something unexpected. I had discovered myself. I was not just a wife or a mother or a sister. I was Catherine, an artist, a survivor, a woman who had faced the worst and come out stronger. I was someone who could forgive without forgetting, who could love without losing herself, who could build a life that was entirely her own. The road ahead was still uncertain. I did not know what would happen with Robert, did not know if Rachel and I would ever truly repair our relationship, did not know what challenges and joys the future would bring. But I knew that whatever came, I would face it with courage and grace, with the knowledge that I was capable of surviving anything, of thriving in the face of adversity. I finished my tea and stood up, walking to the window to look out at the night. The neighborhood was quiet, houses lit from within, families going about their evening routines. Somewhere out there, Daniel was living his life, continuing his pattern of deception and betrayal. Somewhere out there, other women were discovering his lies, their worlds crumbling just as mine had. And somewhere out there, women like Sarah and Jennifer were picking up the pieces, learning to rebuild, finding their own strength. I could not save them all. I could not undo the damage Daniel had caused or prevent him from causing more. But I could be there for the ones who reached out, could share my story and my strength, could be a light in their darkness just as others had been a light in mine. I turned away from the window and walked to my studio, flipping on the light and looking at the painting I had been working on, the woman emerging from darkness into light. She was almost finished now, just a few more touches needed to bring her fully to life. I picked up my brush and added the final details, the highlights in her eyes that made them sparkle with hope, the subtle curve of her lips that suggested a smile just beginning to form. When I was done, I stepped back and looked at her, at this woman who was me and yet not me, who represented everything I had been through and everything I had become. She was beautiful, not in a conventional way, but in the way that comes from surviving, from enduring, from refusing to be broken. I signed my name in the corner of the canvas, a small but significant act of claiming this work, this story, as my own. And then I turned off the light and walked back to the living room, feeling a sense of completion, of closure, of readiness for whatever came next. The next few months passed in a blur of activity and growth. My relationship with Robert developed slowly, carefully, both of us taking our time, learning about each other, building something based on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than passion and urgency. He was patient with my hesitations, understanding of my fears, and I found myself opening up to him in ways I had not thought possible. Emma got engaged to Alex, and the joy on her face when she told me was so pure, so genuine, that it made my heart sing. We spent hours planning the wedding, picking out flowers and dresses and venues, and I was grateful to be part of this happy moment in her life, to see her building a future with someone who truly loved and valued her. Marcus graduated with honors and got a job at a prestigious engineering firm, and I attended his graduation ceremony with tears streaming down my face, so proud of the man he had become, so grateful that he had found his path despite the turmoil of the past few years. My art continued to evolve, my work becoming more confident, more assured. I had another show at Robert's Gallery, this one even more successful than the first, and I sold several pieces to collectors who appreciated the emotion and honesty in my paintings. I was making a living doing something I loved, something that fed my soul, and that felt like a miracle. Rachel and I continued to rebuild our relationship, slowly and carefully. We met for coffee once a month, talking about our lives, our struggles, our hopes. It was not easy, and there were moments when old hurts resurfaced, when I questioned whether I was doing the right thing. But I kept showing up, kept trying, because I believed in the possibility of redemption, in the power of forgiveness to heal even the deepest wounds. One day, about 3 years after the divorce, I was in my studio when my phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize, but I answered it anyway, curious. "Hello?" I said. "Is this Catherine?" A woman's voice asked, and I could hear the nervousness in her tone. "Yes, this is Catherine," I replied. "Who is this?" "My name is Lisa," she said. "I got your number from Sarah. She said you might be able to help me. I have been seeing a man named Daniel, and I just found out he has been lying to me about everything." I closed my eyes, feeling a familiar wave of sadness wash over me. Another one. Another woman caught in Daniel's web. How many more would there be? How many more lives would he damage before he finally faced the consequences of his actions? "I am so sorry," I said, and I meant it. "I know how hard this must be for you." "Sarah said you understood," Lisa said, her voice breaking. "She said you had been through it too, and that you could help me make sense of it all." "I can try," I said. "Would you like to meet for coffee?" "Yes," she said, relief evident in her voice. "Please." We made plans to meet the following day, and after I hung up, I sat in my studio, thinking about Daniel and the endless cycle of pain he created. I wondered if he would ever change, if he would ever take responsibility for his actions, if he would ever see the damage he had caused. But I knew, deep down, that he probably would not. Some people are too broken to fix, too damaged to heal, and all you can do is protect yourself and help others do the same. The next day, I met Lisa at the same cafe where I had met Sarah. She was young, maybe late 20s, with bright eyes that were now dimmed by hurt and confusion. We talked for hours, and I shared my story, offered advice, provided the support and understanding she so desperately needed. And as I listened to her, as I helped her navigate her pain, I realized that this had become my purpose, my calling. I could not change what had happened to me, could not undo the betrayal or erase the scars. But I could use my experience to help others, to be a light in their darkness, to show them that survival was possible, that healing was real, that life could be beautiful again. Over the next year, I met with several more women, all of them victims of Daniel's deception. We formed a support group, meeting once a month to share our stories, to offer encouragement, to remind each other that we were not alone. It was painful, hearing their experiences, seeing the damage he had caused. But it was also healing, for all of us, to have a space where we could be honest, where we could be vulnerable, where we could support each other without judgment. One evening, after one of our meetings, Sarah pulled me aside. "I just want to thank you," she said, her eyes shining with tears, "for everything you have done, for creating this space, for helping all of us. You saved my life, Catherine. I do not know where I would be without you." I hugged her, feeling the weight of her gratitude and the responsibility that came with it. "You saved yourself," I said. "I just showed you that it was possible." "But you did show me," she insisted. And that made all the difference. As I drove home that night, I thought about the journey I had been on, the transformation I had undergone. I had started as a woman who defined herself by her relationships, by her role as a wife and mother and sister. And I had become a woman who defined herself by her own strength, her own creativity, her own capacity for compassion and forgiveness. I had been betrayed by the one I protected most, and that betrayal had nearly destroyed me. But it had also freed me, had forced me to confront who I was and who I wanted to be. And in the end, I had emerged stronger, wiser, more fully myself than I had ever been before. For years after the divorce, Emma got married in a beautiful ceremony in a garden overlooking the ocean. She was radiant in her white dress, her face glowing with happiness as she said her vows to Alex. Marcus stood beside her as one of the groomsmen, tall and handsome in his suit, and I sat in the front row with Robert beside me, holding my hand as tears of joy streamed down my face. As I watched Emma and Alex exchange rings, promising to love and honor each other, I felt a bittersweet mix of emotions. Joy for my daughter, for the life she was building, for the love she had found. Sadness for the marriage I had lost, for the dreams that had died, for the family that would never be whole again. But mostly, I felt hope. Hope that Emma's marriage would be different, that she would build something lasting and true. Hope that the cycle of betrayal and pain would end with my generation, that my children would know a different kind of love, a healthier kind of commitment. At the reception, I danced with Marcus, with Robert, with old friends and new. I laughed and celebrated and toasted to the happy couple, and I felt a lightness in my chest that I had not felt in years. This was what life was supposed to be, I thought. Not perfect, not without pain or struggle, but full of love and connection and moments of pure, unadulterated joy. Later that evening, as the party was winding down, Rachel approached me. She had been invited to the wedding, at my suggestion, and she had come, though she had kept her distance, respecting the boundaries I had set. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. We walked away from the crowd, finding a quiet spot by the edge of the garden where we could see the ocean stretching out before us, dark and vast under the night sky. "Thank you for inviting me," Rachel said. "I know it was not easy, and I appreciate it more than you know." "You are my sister," I said simply. "Despite everything, you are still my sister." She nodded, wiping at her eyes. "I have been in therapy," she said, "working through a lot of things. And one of the things I have realized is that I spent so much of my life comparing myself to you, feeling like I was never good enough, never as successful or as put together. And that jealousy, that resentment, it poisoned me. It made me do things I never should have done." "I understand," I said. "And I am sorry if I ever made you feel that way. I never meant to." "I know," she said. "It was not your fault. It was mine. I let my insecurities control me, and I hurt the person I loved most in the process." We stood there in silence for a moment, listening to the sound of the waves crashing against the shore, feeling the cool night breeze on our skin. "I have forgiven you," I said finally. "It took a long time, and it was not easy, but I have. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to let go of the anger and the hurt." "Thank you," she whispered. "That means everything to me. But I need you to understand something," I continued. "Our relationship will never be what it was. We can be sisters again, we can have a connection, but it will be different. There will always be a part of me that remembers what you did, that guards against being hurt like that again." "I understand," she said. "And I accept that. I am just grateful to have you in my life at all." We hugged then, a tentative, careful embrace, and I felt something shift between us, a healing that was slow and imperfect but real nonetheless. We would never be the sisters we once were, but maybe we could be something new, something built on honesty and hard-won forgiveness rather than blind trust. As the night wore on and the guests began to leave, I found myself standing alone on the terrace, looking out at the ocean. Robert came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and resting his chin on my shoulder. "Beautiful night," he said softly. "Beautiful night," I agreed. "You did good, Kath," he said. "Emma is happy, and you made that possible. You gave her a foundation of love and strength that will carry her through whatever life throws at her." I leaned back against him, feeling the warmth of his body, the steadiness of his presence. "I hope so," I said. "I hope I gave both of them enough." "You did," he assured me. "You are an amazing mother, an amazing woman. And I am lucky to know you." I turned in his arms to face him, looking up into his kind eyes. "I am lucky too," I said. "Lucky to have found you, lucky to have this second chance at happiness." He kissed me then, soft and sweet, and I felt a warmth spread through my chest, a contentment that I had not thought possible after everything I had been through. This was not the passionate, all-consuming love I had felt for Daniel in the early days of our relationship. This was something deeper, more stable, built on mutual respect and genuine affection. It was the kind of love that lasted, that weathered storms, that grew stronger with time. 5 years after the divorce, I stood in a gallery in New York City, surrounded by my paintings, watching as people moved from piece to piece, studying my work, discussing it in hushed, reverent tones. This was my first major solo exhibition, the culmination of years of hard work and dedication, and I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment that was almost overwhelming. Robert stood beside me, his hand in mine, and Emma and Marcus were there too, along with Alex and Marcus's girlfriend, a sweet woman named Olivia. Even Rachel had come, flying in from the city where she now lived, working as a counselor helping women escape abusive relationships. She had found her own purpose, her own way of making amends for the past, and I was proud of her for that. As I looked around at the people I loved, at the life I had built from the ashes of my old one, I felt a sense of completeness, of wholeness, that I had not felt in years. I had been betrayed by the one I protected most, had my world torn apart, had faced pain and loss that I thought would destroy me. But I had survived. More than that, I had thrived. I had discovered who I was outside of my relationships, had found my voice as an artist, had built a community of women who supported and uplifted each other. I had learned to forgive without forgetting, to love without losing myself, to build a life that was entirely my own. Not everything is what it seems, I thought, looking at the painting that hung in the center of the gallery, the one of the woman emerging from darkness into light. What looks like an ending can be a beginning. What feels like destruction can be transformation. And what seems like betrayal can be the catalyst for becoming who you were always meant to be. A woman approached me, middle-aged with kind eyes and a warm smile. "Your work is extraordinary," she said. "So raw, so honest. I can feel the emotion in every brushstroke." "Thank you," I said, feeling my cheeks flush with pleasure. "That means a lot." "Can I ask," she said, gesturing to the painting of the woman emerging from darkness, "what inspired this piece?" I looked at the painting, at the woman who was me and yet not me, who represented everything I had been through and everything I had become. "Life," I said simply. "Pain and loss in the journey to find yourself again." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "I think a lot of us can relate to that," she said. Thank you for sharing your story." After she walked away, I stood there for a moment, looking at my work, at the visual representation of my journey. Each painting told a story, captured a moment, expressed an emotion that words could not adequately convey. And together, they formed a narrative of survival, of resilience, of transformation. That night, after the exhibition had closed and everyone had gone home, Robert and I walked through the streets of New York, hand in hand, talking about the evening, about the future, about all the possibilities that lay ahead. The city was alive around us, lights blazing, people rushing past, the energy palpable and electric. "I am so proud of you," Robert said, squeezing my hand. "You have come so far." "We have come so far," I corrected. "I could not have done this without you." He smiled, pulling me close. "We make a good team," he said. "Yes," I agreed. "We do." As we walked, I thought about Daniel, about where he was and what he was doing. I had heard through the grapevine that he had moved to another state, that he was still up to his old tricks, still leaving a trail of broken hearts in his wake. Part of me felt sorry for him, for the emptiness that must exist inside him, for the inability to truly connect with another person. But mostly, I felt nothing. He was a chapter in my life that had closed, a lesson learned, a catalyst for change. But he was not my present, and he was not my future. My present was this moment, walking through the city with a man who loved and respected me, celebrating a success that I had earned through hard work and dedication. My present was my children, thriving and building their own lives, carrying the lessons I had taught them about strength and resilience and the importance of choosing yourself. My present was my art, my community, my purpose. And my future? My future was wide open, full of possibilities and potential. I did not know what it would bring, did not know what challenges or joys lay ahead. But I knew that whatever came, I would face it with courage and grace, with the knowledge that I was capable of surviving anything, of thriving in the face of adversity. We stopped at a small cafe, ordering coffee and sitting by the window, watching the city move around us. Robert reached across the table and took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "I have been thinking," he said, and there was a nervousness in his voice that I had not heard before. "About us, about our future." My heart began to race, a mix of excitement and fear coursing through me. "What about it?" I asked. He took a deep breath, and I could see him gathering his courage. "I know you have been through a lot," he said. "I know you have reasons to be cautious, to protect yourself. But I love you, Catherine. I love you, and I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and go to sleep beside you every night. I want to be there for you, to support you, to share in your joys and your sorrows." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a simple, elegant ring. "I am not asking you to forget the past," he said. "I am not asking you to be someone you are not. I am just asking you to take a chance on us, on the future we could have together. Will you marry me?" I looked at the ring, at this man who had been so patient, so understanding, so genuinely good. I thought about my first marriage, about the promises that had been broken, the trust that had been shattered. I thought about the fear that still lived inside me, the worry that I would be hurt again, that I would lose myself again. But I also thought about the woman I had become, the strength I had found, the life I had built. I thought about the fact that I was no longer the naive, trusting woman who had married Daniel all those years ago. I was someone different now, someone stronger, someone who knew her own worth and would not settle for less than she deserved. And I looked at Robert, at the love and hope in his eyes, and I knew that he was not Daniel. He was his own person, with his own integrity and his own capacity for loyalty and commitment. He had proven himself over and over again, had shown me through his actions that he was worthy of my trust. "Yes," I said, and my voice was strong and sure. "Yes, I will marry you." His face broke into a wide smile, and he slipped the ring onto my finger, then leaned across the table to kiss me. Around us, the cafe erupted in applause, other patrons having witnessed the proposal, and I laughed, feeling a joy so pure and complete that it brought tears to my eyes. This was my second chance, my new beginning. And I was ready for it. 6 months later, Robert and I were married in a small, intimate ceremony in the garden behind my house. Emma and Marcus stood beside me, and Robert's children from his first marriage stood beside him, and we all came together as a blended family, imperfect but full of love. As I said my vows, looking into Robert's eyes, I felt a sense of peace and certainty that I had not felt the first time around. This was different. I was different. And I knew, with every fiber of my being, that this was right. After the ceremony, we had a small reception in the backyard, with string lights hanging from the trees and music playing softly in the background. I danced with Robert, with my children, with my new stepchildren, and I felt surrounded by love and support and genuine happiness. Rachel was there too, and at one point in the evening, she pulled me aside. "I am so happy for you," she said, tears in her eyes. "You deserve this, Kath. You deserve all the happiness in the world." "Thank you," I said, hugging her. "And thank you for being here. It means a lot." "We have come a long way," she said. "Both of us." "Yes," I agreed. "We have." As the evening wore on and the stars came out, I found myself standing at the edge of the garden, looking back at the house that had witnessed so much pain and transformation. Robert came up beside me, wrapping his arm around my waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. "I am thinking about how far I have come," I said. "About how this house used to feel like a prison, a reminder of everything I had lost. And now it feels like home again. My home. A place I chose to stay in, not because I was trapped, but because I wanted to." "You could have sold it," he said. "Started fresh somewhere else." "I know," I replied. "But that would have felt like running away. Like letting the betrayal win. I needed to reclaim this space, to fill it with new memories, better memories. And I did." He kissed the top of my head. "You are remarkable, you know that?" I smiled, leaning into him. "I am a survivor. We all are." The next morning, Robert and I left for our honeymoon, a 2-week trip to Italy where we would explore art museums and eat incredible food and simply enjoy being together. As we drove to the airport, I looked back at the house one more time, at the life I had built there, and I felt a sense of gratitude so profound it took my breath away. I had been betrayed by the one I protected most. I had lost my marriage, my sister, my sense of security and trust. But I had gained something far more valuable. I had gained myself. In Italy, Robert and I wandered through the streets of Florence and Rome and Venice, marveling at the art and architecture, soaking in the history and beauty. We stood in front of Michelangelo's David, and I felt a kinship with the sculptor who had taken a block of marble and transformed it into something extraordinary. That was what I had done with my life, I realized. I had taken the broken pieces and created something new, something beautiful. One afternoon, we were sitting at a cafe in a small piazza in Rome, sipping espresso and watching the world go by, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I did not recognize. "Hello, Catherine. My name is Michelle. I got your number from the support group. I am going through something similar with Daniel, and I was hoping we could talk when you get back. I know you are on your honeymoon, so no rush. I just wanted to reach out." I showed the text to Robert, and he squeezed my hand. "Another one," he said quietly. "Another one," I confirmed, feeling that familiar mix of sadness and determination. "But she found us. She found the support group. She will be okay. Because of you," he said. "Because you turned your pain into purpose." I typed out a quick response. "Hi, Michelle. I am so sorry you are going through this. I will be back in 2 weeks, and I will be happy to meet with you. You are not alone. Stay strong." I hit send and put my phone away, turning my attention back to Robert, to the beautiful city around us, to the life we were building together. There would always be more women, more victims of Daniel's deception. But there would also always be support, community, healing. The cycle of pain did not have to continue forever. It could be broken, one woman at a time. When we returned from our honeymoon, tanned and relaxed and deeply happy, I met with Michelle. She was in her early 40s, a successful businesswoman who had been completely blindsided by Daniel's lies. We talked for hours, and I introduced her to the support group, watched as the other women welcomed her with open arms and understanding hearts. Over the next few years, the support group grew. We had to move to a larger space to accommodate everyone, and we started offering workshops on rebuilding self-esteem, setting boundaries, and recognizing red flags in relationships. I brought in therapists and life coaches, created resources and reading lists, built a website where women could find information and support. What had started as a small gathering of broken women had become a movement, a community dedicated to healing and empowerment. And at the center of it all was the simple truth that I had learned through my own painful journey: you are not defined by what happens to you, but by how you respond to it. 7 years after the divorce, I received a phone call that I had been both expecting and dreading. It was from a hospital in the city where Daniel had been living. He had suffered a massive heart attack and was in critical condition. They had found my name listed as his emergency contact, even though we had been divorced for years, and they wanted to know if I would come. I sat with the phone in my hand for a long time, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to say no, to let him face this alone as he had left so many others to face their pain alone. But another part of me, the part that had learned compassion and forgiveness, knew that I needed to go. Not for him, but for myself. For closure. I told Robert where I was going, and he offered to come with me, but I said I needed to do this alone. He understood, kissing me goodbye and telling me to call if I needed anything. The drive to the hospital felt surreal, like I was moving through a dream. When I arrived, a nurse directed me to the ICU, and I found Daniel lying in a bed, hooked up to machines, looking small and frail and nothing like the man I had once known. His eyes were closed, his breathing labored, and for a moment, I just stood there, looking at him, feeling the weight of our shared history. A doctor approached me, explaining that Daniel had suffered significant damage to his heart, that the prognosis was not good. He might have days, maybe weeks, but recovery was unlikely. Did he have any family? The doctor asked. Anyone else who should be notified? He has children, I said. I can contact them. I called Emma and Marcus, told them what had happened, left the decision up to them whether they wanted to come. Emma said she would think about it. Marcus said he would be there the next day. I appreciated that they were making their own choices, following their own hearts. I sat beside Daniel's bed, watching the rise and fall of his chest, listening to the beep of the monitors. After a while, his eyes fluttered open, and he looked at me with confusion that slowly turned to recognition. "Catherine," he whispered, his voice weak and raspy. "You came." "I came," I confirmed. He closed his eyes again, and I saw tears leak from the corners. "I am sorry," he said. "For everything. I am so sorry." "I know," I said, and I realized that I believed him. Not because his apology changed anything, not because it erased the pain he had caused, but because I could see in his eyes that he finally understood the damage he had done, the lives he had destroyed. We sat in silence for a while, and then he spoke again. "I wasted my life," he said. "Chasing something I could never find, hurting people who loved me. And for what? I have nothing. No one." "You have your children," I said. "Marcus is coming tomorrow. Emma is thinking about it." He nodded weakly. "I do not deserve them," he said. "I do not deserve their forgiveness." "Maybe not," I agreed. "But that is not for you to decide. That is up to them. What about you?" he asked, looking at me with those eyes that had once made my heart race but now just made me feel sad. "Have you forgiven me?" I thought about it, about the journey I had been on, about the woman I had become. "Yes," I said finally. "I have forgiven you. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to be free of the anger and the hurt. I deserve to move forward with my life without carrying the weight of what you did." He closed his eyes again, and more tears fell. "Thank you," he whispered. I stayed with him for another hour, and then I stood to leave. "Goodbye, Daniel," I said. "Goodbye, Catherine," he replied. "And thank you. For everything. For being a good wife, a good mother, a good person. I never deserved you." "No," I said gently. "You did not." I walked out of the hospital into the bright afternoon sun, and I felt lighter somehow, as if a burden I had been carrying for years had finally been lifted. I had faced my past, had looked it in the eye, and I had survived. More than that, I had thrived. Daniel died 3 days later, with Marcus by his side. Emma had decided not to come, and I supported her decision. We all grieve and process in our own ways, and there is no right or wrong way to handle the death of someone who hurt you so deeply. The funeral was small, attended by Marcus, a few of Daniel's co-workers, and surprisingly, Rachel. She had flown in to pay her respects, and afterward, we stood together in the cemetery, looking at the fresh grave. "I loved him," she said quietly. "Despite everything, despite knowing what he was, I loved him." "I know," I said. "And I am sorry. Sorry that he hurt you too, sorry that you lost him, sorry for all of it." She looked at me with surprise. "You are apologizing to me? After everything I did?" "I am acknowledging your pain," I said. "You loved him, and he is gone, and that hurts. Your pain is real, even if the relationship was built on lies." She started to cry then, and I put my arm around her, holding her as she sobbed. We stood there together, two women who had loved the same man, who had been betrayed by him in different ways, who had both survived and found their way to healing. After the funeral, life returned to normal. I continued my art, my support group, my marriage to Robert. Emma and Alex had their first child, a beautiful baby girl they named Grace, and I became a grandmother, marveling at this tiny person who represented hope and new beginnings. Marcus proposed to Olivia, and they started planning their wedding, and I watched with joy as my children built lives filled with love and purpose. 10 years after the divorce, I stood in my studio, putting the finishing touches on a painting that would be the centerpiece of my next exhibition. It was a triptych, 3 panels that told a story. The first panel showed a woman in darkness, broken and alone. The second showed her emerging, fighting her way toward the light. And the third showed her standing tall, surrounded by color and life and beauty, transformed by her journey. I stepped back and looked at it, at this visual representation of my story, and I felt a sense of completion. This was it. This was the culmination of everything I had been through, everything I had learned, everything I had become. Robert came into the studio, carrying 2 glasses of wine. He handed me one and stood beside me, looking at the painting. "It is your masterpiece," he said. "It is my story," I replied. "Our story. The story of everyone who has been broken and found the strength to rebuild." He clinked his glass against mine. "To rebuilding," he said. "To thriving," I added. We drank, and I looked around at the studio, at the life I had created, at the man I loved standing beside me. I thought about the woman I had been 10 years ago, standing in that kitchen, learning that her husband was having an affair with her sister. I thought about the pain, the betrayal, the sense that my world was ending. And I realized that my world had ended. But endings are not always bad. Sometimes they are necessary. Sometimes they clear the way for something better, something truer, something more authentic. I had been betrayed by the one I protected most. But that betrayal had set me free. It had forced me to confront who I was, to discover my own strength, to build a life that was entirely my own. And in doing so, I had become the woman I was always meant to be. Not everything is what it seems. What looks like an ending can be a beginning. What feels like destruction can be transformation. And what seems like the worst thing that could ever happen can actually be the catalyst for the best thing, for finding yourself, for learning what you are truly capable of. I raised my glass to the painting, to the woman in the third panel who stood tall and strong and unbroken. That woman was me. And I was proud of her. Proud of everything she had survived, everything she had overcome, everything she had become. "Here's to second chances," I said. "To new beginnings. To the courage to rebuild. And to the knowledge that we are so much stronger than we ever imagined." Robert wrapped his arm around me, and we stood there together, looking at the painting, looking at the future, looking at all the possibilities that lay ahead. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that whatever came next, I would face it with grace and courage and the unshakable knowledge that I was enough. I had always been enough. And I always would be. The end.